Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me. There was no reason to lie. Clearly, he was coming to me, wanted me to do something about it.
I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate.
That I would be doing a disservice to the Menendez brothers, to the victim families, to the public, if I do anything other than a thorough review of the facts and the law.
It's a big day for the Menendez brothers as the convicted killers are appearing in court. They're hoping to be released. Our panel of prosecutors are helping us break down the possible outcomes from today's big hearing. And the missing kayaker now speaking out, revealing just how he faked his own death, saying that he's doing fine. Now, police are saying that they're pulling on his heartstrings to try to get him to come home to his family for the holidays. Also, our cameras are bringing you the arraignment of former Sheriff Stines. He's accused of murdering a Kentucky judge, and we're spotlighting how his daughter could be a key part of this case. Plus, closing arguments set to get underway in the manslaughter trial for Brian Camp. Was his testimony enough to tip the scales of justice in his favor? It's all coming up next for you, plus much more right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning to you. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. We've got a great show planned for you, so let's get to that coffee and court, shall we? Go ahead and grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. The home is sacrosanct. Brian Camp was robbed of his safety in his own home, the place where he should feel the safest in the world, when burglar Jonathan Latender broke in. Camp fought him off while he was completely naked. Think about how vulnerable he must have felt. No time to even get dressed. His life was in jeopardy. And Camp averted 2 attempts on his life when Latender got a hold of 2 of his firearms. And Camp ordered Latender to leave his house multiple times, and Latender refused. So what was Brian Camp supposed to do? I gotta tell you, I'm surprised he didn't kill Jonathan Latender sooner, because he legally could have as soon as he broke in during the middle of the night and entered that sacrosanct space. And what's really ironic and messed up, if you ask me, is that if Camp had fired multiple shots and killed Latender immediately, he probably wouldn't have been criminally charged like he is today. Camp is being prosecuted now because of the time frame, because he waited to shoot, and then he had a lag in time before he fired the first and the second shots. And it's that second shot that's the basis of the charging, according to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Does this sound like a just prosecution to you? I think Brian Camp is so smart to pick a jury and so smart to testify. Because if the prosecution is intent on making him the bad guy here, he's smart to appeal to the common sense of the members of the jury. Those men and women have to be thinking, would I want to be tried for this if I were in the same position? The answer is certainly not. That's my opening statement on this Monday. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that during the commission of the offense, the defendant personally used a firearm? Yes. So say we all, dated the 16th day of August, 2024.
Susan Lawrence's sentencing scheduled to happen today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time in Florida. Remember her? She was convicted of manslaughter in the fatal shooting death of A.J. Owens. And in Kentucky, we've got former Sheriff Stines. His formal arraignment set to happen this afternoon. He was just indicted by a grand jury for the shooting death of Judge Kevin Mullins. So we'll have that for you. And also the all-important closing arguments starting up in the trial I was just talking about. 9 a.m. is the time for for the manslaughter trial of Brian Camp to resume, and we're going to go there together live when it begins. Now, to our top story for you this morning. Will the Menendez brothers be freed today? Attorneys for defendants Eric and Lyle Menendez will ask a judge to reconsider the convictions of those brothers in what's called a status conference hearing today. The brothers serving life sentences without the possibility of parole for the 1989 murders of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. So what we want to know this morning, there are three paths to freedom, really, for the brothers. So let's see how successful today's path could really be, right? So look at these on your screen. It's clemency from the governor. We know there's also a resentencing hearing scheduled for December 11th, and we've got a habeas corpus petition hearing set to happen today. So taking these in turn, California Governor Gavin Newsom declined to grant the brothers' clemency petition. He's deferring to the brand new DA of Los Angeles County, Nathan Hochman, who spoke about the possibility of recommending resentencing to the court. He talked to Court TV about that. Let's listen.
The way resentencing works is that on December 11th, there'll be a hearing. If I'm ready to proceed and have done that extensive factual and legal review, we'll proceed. If not, I might ask for some additional time, but I've got 34 years of criminal justice experience.
Now, besides clemency and resentencing, the third option for potential freedom is a habeas corpus petition, filed last year, actually, asking for a review of some brand new evidence that was not presented at trial. So that's what's going to be discussed today at the hearing that's set for 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The brothers are going to be there virtually. They won't be there in person. No cameras are being allowed in the courtroom, but we do have someone from Court TV who's going to be inside the courtroom watching everything that happens for us and reporting back on the details. So will be an interesting day. Now, we've assembled a panel of sensational prosecutors to talk about this. I want to bring them in right now. Let's welcome in former prosecuting attorney. He's in the private sector practicing right now. He's also the Speaker pro tem in the House in South Carolina, Tommy Pope. And want to welcome in his colleague. They worked together putting away Susan Smith. You just saw him on TV last week, the current solicitor for the 16th Judicial Circuit of South Carolina, attorney Kevin Brackett. Kevin, great to have you on Opening Statements. Welcome. And I'm so glad I have you with Tommy. You two are sensational lawyers and sensational prosecutors. Your service has been tremendous in South Carolina, both of you. So, Kevin, I'm going to start with you since you're here first today. Let's talk about the brothers being released. Do you think that there's actually a chance that they could be that their freedom could be announced as soon as today?
Well, Julie, it's California, so anything could happen. I would have one opinion if we were talking about South Carolina or other parts of the country, and a different opinion for California. They have a different set of rules and standards they go by, apparently. So it is possible, but it sounds more like, just from the way that this is being postured, that this is more of an opportunity for the parties to get together and sort of lay out a timeline for what might happen, what each party would need to be prepared, and to make sure that they're on schedule. So that's typically what happens at a status conference.
Right, Kevin, thank you for tempering our expectations with the caveat that it's California, as you said, so who the heck knows. Tommy Pope, the two pieces of evidence, as you know, this letter that came up, apparently Eric is said to have written this letter to a relative. They say that it was written before trial, before he gave the testimony about being abused by his father. But it's been noted by people in that office, particularly one who came on Court TV, John Lewin, that we really don't know about this letter. We have no idea when it was written. It could have been written a couple weeks ago. But it's one of the things nonetheless. Also, the other thing is that there's some outside corroboration for the claims. One of the members of the boy band Menudo is willing to come forward and say that he was molested by Jose Menendez at the mansion where the family lived, and so also serving as potential corroboration. What do you think about these pieces of evidence?
I tell you, Julie, one, I'm disappointed. Brackett took my job as solicitor, and now you got him on Court TV. You're about to put me out to pasture, I know. But
no, never.
I tell you,
never.
We have actually experienced the quote after discovered evidence on some of our death penalty cases Kevin and I've dealt with, and it's just ironic to me that this information always comes so remotely that it's hard to disprove it, so to speak. We had Kevin will remember the stranger under the bridge that they miraculously found. We have. I'm concerned, fabrication, if you want to call it. I'm concerned about fabrication. I'm concerned that I thought the first trial that ended in a mistrial, if I've read it correctly, these issues came up. So I'm really interested in why, if it was out there already, why it wasn't brought up. I guess they're saying this is better evidence now. And ultimately, I'm concerned. It seemed a lot political. We don't want to drive justice by Netflix specials and so it concerned me that prosecutor, it's interesting, we've got a new prosecutor who's going to put a fresh set of eyes on it.
Exactly. I love what you said, Tommy. I couldn't agree more. A fabrication, and that's something one of the deputy DAs in the office, John Liu, and I keep going back to him because he's someone we all know at Court TV, famously prosecuted Robert Durst. We saw him on Court TV Live for many weeks trying that case, and he said that in particular, Lyle, he said, but both of these brothers have a history of fabricating evidence during the first trial when, as you noted, Tommy, all of this stuff was allowed in. We know the abuse claims were largely excluded in the second trial. And John Lewin said, how in the world can we trust this? It hasn't been vetted. So he's been one of those outspoken people who disagreed vehemently with George Gascon, the outgoing DA. I've got a clip of him talking to the media about how there's such a split in his office. Let's watch.
I have to tell you unequivocally that we don't have a universal agreement. There are people in the office that strongly believe that the Menendez brothers should stay in prison the rest of their life, and they do not believe that they were molested. And there are people in the office that strongly believe that they should be released immediately.
Even so, Kevin, let me go back to you, please. Even so, their sentence was life in prison without parole. I mean, these were cold-blooded murders, as you know. Why in the world are these guys entitled to consideration? I guess, I think of all the other criminals who are locked up for the same kind of thing, and why are the Menendez brothers looking for special treatment? Your thoughts on that, please, Kevin?
Well, sometimes in cases like this that are high profile, there's a tendency to suddenly find reasons to kick the embers and bring these cases back to life. They drew so much attention before, so it'll draw attention again. And that affects these potential witnesses who might come forward because, it gives them a chance to sort of become involved and be in the limelight for a minute. It really makes me wonder why this is even being considered, because typically an after discovered evidence issue focuses on actual innocence. And this seems to be more of an effort to revisit a motion, an evidentiary motion that occurred in the trial, not to question whether or not they were guilty, but whether, they had some mitigation for why they may have done what they did, which, that sort of thing can go on forever. And if this becomes the standard for how we're going to look at cases after the fact, then if we're going to be able to dig into it to this granular level and try to adjust these sort of collateral issues, then when will victims ever get resolution? Because any case is subject to having this kind of issue revisited and new evidence supposedly found that's going to alter how the sentence should have been imposed. So I don't really understand it from the East Coast, how this sort of issue could even arise.
I love your analysis, Kevin, and you're right. When it really gets down to it, you pointed out something that's so key. What does this have to do with the facts of it? I mean, this was a planned, premeditated, brutal killing. I mean, after they had fired so many shots, they went out and reloaded and came back and fired more. And then they went on to spend their parents' money. I mean, blowing something like $700,000 in 6 months, living like kings. These guys certainly did didn't act remorseful or act like victims then. What is this even about? I love that point, Kevin. Tommy, let me ask you please about the Menendez mania. You know, when you're a prosecutor, you know, the job that you held for so many years that Kevin holds now. Tommy, how key is it to tune out the noise from the hype and the fascination with these criminals in order to pursue justice?
I think absolutely it's key for the prosecutor, but it's also key for the courts. You know, going back to Smith, we talked about it's like bizarro world. Rulings would happen that you wouldn't think would normally happen. And so it's got to be focused in the courtroom, and hopefully that's what will happen here.
Exactly. I love having you both on the program, and especially together. This is such a treat for us, and you're going to stick with us. Tommy Pope, Kevin Brackett, stand by, please. Here's what's coming up after the break for you here on Opening Statements.
36 needs to be in the Western County Courthouse. That shots fired on the second floor.
The former sheriff accused of murdering a Kentucky judge is back in court to be arraigned after a grand jury has indicted him. We're spotlighting the connection between the judge and the sheriff's daughter. But first, the missing kayaker who faked his own death has resurfaced, and he's making contact with police. We're getting a glimpse into his new life overseas.
Do you think he may have faked his own death?
Oh, that's what we believe has happened.
Have you ever seen anything like this in your experience in law enforcement?
No, I haven't. This is tops the list.
Oh, we got some brand new developments to share with you in the case of the Wisconsin kayaker accused of faking his own death. How Ryan Borgward did it is what's trending in true crime. The 44-year-old was reported missing back in August after he didn't return from a fishing trip. Earlier this month, investigators made contact with Borgward, who allegedly fled to Europe.
Good evening, it's Ryan Borgward. Today, hello, Matt. Today is November 11th. It's approximately 10 a.m. by you guys. I'm in my apartment. I am safe, secure, no problem. Hope this works.
Oh, so there's a video showing he's alive and well. Now, take a look at his movement. This is how he did it. So police say while he was on the lake, so he goes to the lake, and they say that he deliberately overturns his kayak, dumps his cell phone in the lake, used an inflatable that he brought with him to take him back to the shore. They say that he also brought a bike there and left it and took it he left it while he was dumping the kayak, and then took that bike to ride overnight to Madison, Wisconsin. From there, once he got to Madison, he boarded a bus and went to Detroit. From Detroit, he took another bus to Canada. He winds up there, look at that, and then he flies across the pond and eventually winds up in Uzbekistan because he was going to see a woman. Surprise, surprise. That's what drew him to Uzbekistan. And it was that woman, to her credit, who did get him in touch with police recently since this search has been going on. Can you imagine the resources that the local officials are spending trying to look for this guy? I mean, they spent so much time searching that lake and the surrounding area. This guy left his wife and his kids at home just to start a new life, apparently. So this morning, we're asking our power panel, what is the most shocking part of the kayaker's story? Let's bring them in now. Still with me, I have the former solicitor for the 16th Judicial Circuit in South Carolina. He's a lawmaker now and in private practice, attorney Tommy Pope. We have the current solicitor for the 16th Judicial Circuit of South Carolina, Tommy's friend and colleague, Kevin Brackett. Kevin famously helped Tommy put away Susan Smith. And we want to welcome into the conversation retired criminal defense attorney and author Kirk Nurmi, famously defended Jodi Arias. Good morning to you all. Kirk, let me begin with you, please. What is the most shocking part about this for you?
Well, boy, I tell you, when I first heard about this story, I thought someone at Court TV was pranking me. This is quite the adventure here, right? I mean, you know, one of the things that's shocking, and of course we have to say, you know, we think about these situations, and at least it didn't end in the ultimate tragedy, right? So many times on court TV, we're talking about someone who killed another person in an effort to get away from their marriage or their family, what have you. But, you know, it's always shocking to me the extent that people will go. I mean, we think about this is like James Bond level planning, right? He's got all this mapped out, et cetera. And it's just shocking to me the extent that people will go to get out of situations rather than just dealing with them as they are and moving forward with life. So it's always shocking. We can't minimize what he did, like you said, the resources, but the planning and everything is just stunning.
It really is. It really is, Kirk. As you said, it stuns and amazes you at the lengths someone would go to avoid just regular problems that everybody has in American relationships, right? I mean, what a coward this guy is. Couldn't face his wife and his family and say, you know what, I want out of this. I've fallen in love with someone in Uzbekistan. You know, has to put his children and his wife through the cruelty of thinking that he's dead. I mean, just a cruel coward this guy is to me. And I'm going to talk about charges. Kevin, let me go to you on this one, please, our sitting DA. So tell me, when you think about what this guy could potentially be criminally charged with, I keep hearing that question crop up. What comes to mind for him, please?
Well, the insurance aspect of this is something that I think I would look at. And, you know, of course, he wasn't the beneficiary, so it wasn't a personal fraud for his benefit. But still, if he anticipated, as I'm sure he did, that his wife would file a claim and try to get the insurance policy validated and receive the money, he would know that that was fraudulent because that wasn't true. He wasn't dead. So, you know, it could be an attempted insurance fraud. In addition to that, possibly obstruction of justice for causing the sheriff and all the law enforcement agencies involved in the search and rescue operation that was undertaken to try to recover him or rescue him. A tremendous amount of money was expended, an effort on their part. So those are a couple of avenues that I would be looking at if this had happened in my jurisdiction.
Kevin, thank you for that. Tommy Pope, you're also retired from law enforcement. You served with SLED for many years. Would you speak to that point about how dangerous it was? I don't want to lose sight of the fact that so many rescuers risk their own lives searching that lake and diving and trying to find this guy when he was never in jeopardy, never deceased, never missing. He was off, you know, living his best life in Uzbekistan with his new woman.
Well, apparently, Julie, he wasn't living his best life, because the most shocking part for me is he thinks he can have a do-over. He's chased this love across the sea, didn't work out, and now he wants to come back. But I think, you know, ironically, on the tail end of last week and, you know, all the efforts law enforcement made during the Smith case, I mean, it's dangerous. They're out searching. They're doing the stress level for this family. He's caused more damage, and it's just, to me, it's pure selfishness. If reading between the lines, he went to chase his true love. You know, unfortunately, we had a governor in South Carolina that kind of did the same thing, and that didn't work out any better, I don't believe.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you, Tommy. And so let's also talk about the family here. Of course, we all feel for them. During a presser last week, the Green Lake County, Wisconsin, of course, Sheriff Mark Podol gave his take on the search for this guy, Ryan Borgward. And he said he's got concerns about him possibly coming home to be with his family for the holidays. Let's take a listen.
Has he indicated that he might ever willingly return?
Our communications are continuing to go on about that matter. His biggest concern is how the community is going to react to him. And I can see that. Okay, he staged his death, and unfortunately, one of the things that he did say was he didn't expect us to go more than 2 weeks in searching for him.
Oh, the family, they may hate him. So let's talk about what are the odds that he does return home to the family that he created. 3 beautiful children with his wife. He's abandoned them all. Is he coming back for Thanksgiving? Kirk Nurmi, what do you say, please?
Boy, it's hard to say. It's wild to me that we're having a negotiation of a return of a crime like this, right? I mean, obviously he could stay where he's at. You know, obviously we've talked about the resources and things of that nature, but he fled. He's going to come back to face the music. That's going to be tough. I'm wondering about what's going on with this guy's mental health, because when I think about this negotiation and what he's worried about, I'm wondering if he isn't somewhat relishing in the fame of this, the notoriety of this. So I'm wondering what's going on here. But, you know, as far as I can see, his family probably should not receive him back, and he would probably be better advised, and maybe the United States would be better if he stayed where he's at.
I like that point too, Kirk. Thank you for that. Kevin Brackett, what do you think? You think this guy's coming home?
Well, I think he's gonna. It's a lot, like Mark said, it's going to depend on where this guy's head is at. Because if he's rational and he's thinking clearly, eventually he's going to come to the conclusion that he can't do his children like this. He can't just leave them wondering about their dad for the rest of their life and thinking that he didn't love them. Eventually, I think he's going to have to face the music and come back and address this issue. I think while he is potentially facing charges, they're not the kind of charges that are going to put him in jail forever and ever. There'll be serious charges that he'll have to address because he did a very terrible thing. And obviously he has to face his kids because he sat over there for all this time, allowing his kids to think he was dead or wonder about his well-being, and his wife and the rest of his family. So, I mean, he's done a terrible thing. But I think at the end, if he's rational, he's thinking clearly, he's going to want to come back and fix this.
Yes, as he should. Boy, oh boy, isn't it the truth that oftentimes people's problems bear their own fingerprints? This guy just created a world of trouble for himself, and we've got to leave it there for time's sake. A great discussion, though. You're all sticking around. Tommy, Kevin, Kirk, stand by, please. Still ahead here on Opening Statements, former Sheriff Mickey Stines set to be in court arraigned on the recent grand jury issued indictment for the murder of a Kentucky judge. We're spotlighting the role that his daughter may play in his upcoming case. And defendant Brian Camp defending himself in his own home and on the witness stand. Did he tip the scales for you with his testimony? Talk about it coming up.
Prizes.
Welcome back. This morning, we're spotlighting the case of the Kentucky sheriff who shot and killed a judge. Now, these two were friends. They were friends. They had just gone to lunch that day. And today, former Sheriff Mickey Stines is going to be arraigned after he was just indicted by a grand jury for the crime of murder of a public official. The judge he's accused of killing was his longtime friend, Judge Kevin Mullins. And there is surveillance video of the incident. You'll recall this was played in court at the preliminary hearing. You can see the two of them talking, and then you see the sheriff raise up his firearm and shoot. Now, we still don't know the motive. Law enforcement's being really tight-lipped about this, but we know that Stines called his daughter, his minor daughter, from his phone and from the judge's phone right before the shooting. Take a listen.
I wasn't present, but when he was taken into custody, I was told by one of the other officers that were there that he made the comment, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
Now, Stines' attorneys don't deny that Stines shot Mullins, but they say that he was in the middle of an extreme emotional disturbance. So they are fighting the charge of murder. They're saying this is more of a manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter situation. Now, there's this connection with Stines' daughter that's very unclear, probably deliberately unclear. Let's talk about what could have made the sheriff so upset at his friend, the judge, so upset that he shot and killed him. Let's bring back in our guests, attorneys Tommy Pope and Kevin Brackett. Tommy, I want to go to you, please. General thoughts on what's being put out in the public realm and what's very clearly being kept quiet about this.
Julie, initially, when we were talking about it in the past, it sounded almost like something of a sexual nature, perhaps. When we first were covering it, we talked about his phone and the judge's phone and why the daughter's number would be in there and so on and so forth. But what you just heard from the testimony was that he said some variation of they're trying to kidnap my wife and daughter, which to me lends itself perhaps to some type of delusion or mental health issue that we're not aware of, that may be some form of mitigation, because either it's heat of passion or there's some serious mental health issues going on.
That's a really good point, Tommy. Either or here, perhaps. I have a clip I want to play for you, Kevin. This is one of the Kentucky State Police detectives. His name is Clayton Stamper. He was on the stand as the one witness called during the preliminary hearing. Let's take a listen to some of what he testified to pertaining to the phone calls that the sheriff made while he was in the judge's chambers.
Sheriff Stines uses his telephone to make some phone calls. He then borrows Judge Mullen's cell phone and appears to make a call on that. And that led to what you just saw.
Kevin, I want to get your thoughts, please, here on the part of the story that's missing. There's something going on with the sheriff's daughter that isn't being spoken about. What do you think, please?
It's very clear, what happened in this case, but the why is the question. And as regards the daughter and the fact that he called the daughter from his own phone as well as the judge's phone, and that he had the judge had the daughter's phone number in his phone. Now, of course, I don't know the history and the length of their relationship. He could be the godfather to the child. I don't know. So it's definitely, there's a lot of unknowns here, but it certainly, it lends itself to speculation, which I don't like to get into, even because I don't know this man, and I would never want to speculate the deceased on what may have been going on in his life. But in addition to the comments Tommy made about the sheriff may have been under a delusion or some sort of mental health breakdown, there's also some possibility that there is a wrinkle to this relationship that we're unaware of, which could have excited the anger of the sheriff and caused him to do what he did. But we don't know what that is, and I really don't like to speculate because, again, Judge Mullen's, his own reputation and personality, his own reputation is on the line, and he's the victim in this case.
Right. Thank you for that, Kevin. I know that this came out during the preliminary hearing that investigators, and you would hope they would cross-check everything. So not only have they gone through the sheriff's phone records, the judge's phone records, but they're also going through the daughter's phone records, as we found out. Tommy, I'd like to play this clip for you. Again, this is that same investigator from the preliminary hearing.
You intend to obtain records for her cell phone number?
Possibly, yes.
Do you believe that will be soon that you'll do that?
Could be, yes.
Had you already intended to do that, or did you just respond to my question?
Well, the call should be on the judge's records, too.
Well, I understand.
And she's made statements about what occurred during those conversations.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit more that perhaps there was communication going on between the judge and the daughter. Was it inappropriate? Maybe, maybe not. Tommy, what did you think when you heard that clip there?
I think our first mind is to go exactly where you went, and it must be nefarious. But, the officer was so flat in his delivery, it could have been she told us that she was working on an intern project and needed more information about judges. I was thinking what Kevin was saying, our judge is here. Kevin probably has my daughter's phone number and I have hers, to help them with school or whatever the case may be. So, again, back to Kevin not wanting to speculate, Julie, it could be, an innocent answer. It is clear to me that law enforcement knows and that we're going to have to hear it in court.
Right, Tommy. You know, and another thing too, and again, we don't know, and I appreciate how careful you both are being with not speculating and just analyzing the facts as we know them. Kevin, let's say just for the sake of our analysis, because I'm sure you run into this, you know, in your office, let's say there was something inappropriate going on with that minor child, let's say, and then you have this prosecution going on of the child's parent. How do you protect the child and what occurred? Do you know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to violate her privacy. You know, if that is the situation, again, we don't know. But if you need to carry out the prosecution and if it's part of the story, what things do you do as a solicitor to try to protect any minor victims who may come up in any case? Not saying it's going on in this one. We don't know.
Well, you do have to have these things take place in an open courtroom, because in the U.S. all the courts are open. What you can do to protect the child in some circumstances is allow them to testify remotely via closed circuit television or something of that nature, to keep them from having to do this in front of a bunch of strangers. But if it's information and it's relevant, it needs to come out.
Mm-hmm. And appreciate that remote testimony, something to conceal the minor's identity. And we do see it often with the cases we have, as you both know. We see that sometimes it's voice only, sometimes, as you said, different courtroom setup, Kevin. So we'll just have to wait and see if that is in fact the case. Again, we don't know, but really appreciate the great analysis from you both. Can't wait to have you both back here on Opening Statements. Attorneys and friends and colleagues, Tommy Pope and Kevin Brackett, thank you both so much for your time and your expertise. Coming up here after this break, here's what we've got for you.
What were the things he was saying to you while he was on the ground?
He said multiple times in a row, "I need an attorney." And then he said multiple times in a row, "I am going to kill you."
It's what the burglar said, according to defendant Brian Camp. Did he tip the scales of justice in his manslaughter trial? We'll talk about it as closing arguments in the case are coming up this morning.
We want to understand the mindset behind your actions in this case. Tell me, why are you here?
She needed payback.
Payback with her life?
Very funny, really. I'm laughing. You see me, I laugh.
I don't want any of this. Are you not prepared today to take responsibility for any of your crimes?
Interview with a Killer. Marathon starting Thursday, 11:10 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales of justice in the manslaughter trial for Brian Camp. Closing arguments set to happen in minutes. 9 a.m. Eastern is the time the judge has set for that to happen. We got our cameras ready to go. Now, this case is about a shooting in a home. Brian Camp fatally shot Jonathan Latender in self-defense, he says, after Latender broke into the home that Camp shares with his girlfriend and their 2 children. Now, apparently, Latender, as Camp came to find out later, was a jilted ex-lover. He got with Camp's girlfriend at a time that she and Camp were on a break. Camp didn't know who the guy was, just knows there's an intruder in the house in the middle of the night. And what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is prosecuting him for is the second shot that he fired. They said that everything he did prior to that second shot was fine, but the second shot is manslaughter, according to the Commonwealth. Brian Camp took the stand, was very calm, testifying about the shooting, very matter of fact, very serious. Take a look.
What did he do after you shot him?
He fell to the ground. I was having a hard time processing what just happened, and my mental state was blurry and jumbled up at best. I was not trying to shoot anybody.
What did you want him to do?
I wanted him to get out of the house.
From this distance, with your non-dominant hand, you point to the 6-hour at Jonathan Latender, and you hit him in the upper top back part of his head.
Yes.
You never told the police that you shot Jonathan Latender in the head, did you?
I did not.
Sitting here today, do you regret putting him down?
Objection. Sustained.
All right, what'd you think of the testimony? Did it tip the scales in his favor, yes or no? Hit us up on social media, let us know. I want to bring in retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi on this, get his thoughts. All right, Kirk, what did you think?
Well, boy, I think the Commonwealth is proving to be a place where you don't need evidence against you to be charged with murder. I think that this case, I mean, if this really tipped the scales, I think the fact that he took the stand was in his favor. I don't know that he needed to do that, in the sense that I think the facts were such that it would be difficult for me to believe that a conviction would come out of this. But the intricacies of his testimony probably aren't as important as the fact that he took the stand, because he's sitting there saying he did nothing wrong. I think even though jurors aren't supposed to, make hay of that, if you will, they're going to give him credit for doing that. And I think one thing that was particularly interesting that might have turned off some of the jurors, that immediately turned me off, Julie, I don't know if you noticed the prosecutor pull a gun and point it at the witness, at a man who'd been traumatized by someone coming from his home. That is certainly not going to endear the jury to the prosecutor, and might lead to an even quicker acquittal.
It's such a great point, Kirk. Such a great point. You know, and I love that you pointed. I haven't heard any other guests point that out. So thank you for that. Going back to that moment, let's say you are Brian Kemp's attorney and you see that happen. What would you have done in the moment when the prosecutor went in and did that little reenactment of his?
Boy, it's hard to say. If I would have, depending on where things were going, where he was holding up, I might have objected to it, or I might have saved it for closing argument. Say, look, the prosecutor is so desperate to convict this man, he's going to point a gun at him. He is going to re-traumatize him. Mr. Kemp is the victim here. The prosecutor wants to make him a further victim, because he's even going to point a gun at him in court. Ladies and gentlemen, don't make him a victim anymore. Send him home.
Boom. Boom. Drop the mic right there, Kirk Nurmi. That's a strong argument. I want to play another clip for you, please. This is where Brian Kemp is saying he didn't want to shoot Latender. He just wanted him to get out of his house.
Why didn't you shoot him with the muzzle loader?
I was not trying to shoot anybody.
What did you want him to do?
I wanted him to get out of the house.
And each time that he was given an opportunity, what would he do? Opportunity to leave the house, what would he do?
He would not take the opportunity and then charge right towards me.
Kirk, could you believe that this fight? I mean, this guy, he's naked, sound asleep in the middle of the night, doesn't even have time to get dressed, and averts 2 attempts on his life, one with the muzzleloader and one with the shotgun, before he takes his handgun and fires in self-defense. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that we're here, right? We have the Commonwealth conceding that the first shot was okay, but that we know that the deceased now, I'm not going to call him a victim, the deceased move forward was still threatening Mr. Kemp. I mean, I don't understand what anybody would be expected to do in that situation. Are they supposed to give him a bus ticket home? I mean, I just don't get it. So, the idea, again, that there's any evidence against Mr. Kemp just befuddles me.
Right. And Kirk, I love what you just said. I smiled when you said, what is he supposed to do? Give him a bus ticket home? That's exactly the kind of thing I hope his attorneys do in closing arguments. Make it seem as absurd as it is. The guy's in his home. What was he supposed to do? Set a plate for him and give him a meal? The guy's trying to kill him. He's trying to kill him. What was he supposed to do? This case is really, really infuriating, I think, for a lot of reasons. And we're going to see the closing arguments in a couple of minutes. Kirk Nurmi, we love having you on opening statements. Thank you for your time and your expertise this morning. We'll see you soon. Happy Thanksgiving, friend, if I don't talk to you before Thursday. And coming up next, we're going live together to Massachusetts.